I'd say this was actually a pretty productive anime watching week. For starters, I managed to finish Great Teacher Onizuka, watching it with my friend, so it's been a slow watch. And I actually have to say that it was worthwhile to watch it all the way through. Overall, I thought Onizuka himself, while there were cool things he could do, at the same time I found him to be somewhat of an unlikable character. So, I considered a lot of his coolness to be more fluky than deliberate, but maybe that was intentional. A lot of the situations, I don't know how I describe them, but overall, watching the series all the way through, I was actually surprised how much relevance the final story arc had to the overall story, which I thought wouldn't have something like that. I'm not sure how to describe it other than to say that's what it was, and if it's something you've watched, there's actually more closure to the final episode than you would think. Even though there is an open-endedness to it, it covers an issue that was actually ever present in the series that that maybe might not be apparent until the final resolution happens. And then all of a sudden, I guess it makes the series relevant. So, an enjoyable watch, or rather, an enjoyable finish to a series, which had neat things here and there. Just had to deal with a main character I kinda didn't like. Now, Yu Yu Hakusho. I started watching DVD releases back when they were coming out, and slowed down a bit somewhere in there, and lost track of where I was and what I would need to do, etc., etc. So recently, my brother and his wife decided they wanted to start watching Yu Yu Hakusho, and in this case, I guess the reason for this is because the Blu-rays had been sitting out. I'm not ripping the Blu-rays because I don't have this space for that many ripped stuff. Blu-rays, specifically DVDs, I still have a lot of space for. But, so the Blu-rays are staying out in a pile of unprocessed videos, I guess. And the idea is that I'll eventually get around to, oh well, she saw them there, she remembers it and wanted to watch it again, remember some of the story arcs in particular, although I think she read the manga as opposed to watching the anime. And that led into the both of them and, watching Yu Yu Hakusho and me restarting it like I've been wanting to. I need excuses to restart specific things since I've just got so many things to watch. In this case, watching it with them may be a good thing because it may give me incentive to continue watching. Unfortunately, well, I guess actually it works out that there's probably going to be a limitation to how quickly we can go, because I really want to watch the Blu-ray versions now, and that's because I noticed this while watching the Blu-ray, and when I put the DVD version on the computer right next to me at the same time watching the Blu-ray version, I couldn't help but think that they actually did a really good job of cleaning it up even more, making outlines and lines sharper, colors more vibrant, and removing some of that subtle staticiness that you tend to find in 90s animes. I think Yu Yu Hakusho is 90s. So it was very interesting. Maybe it's the sort of thing where before and after pictures would be a worthwhile thing for me to post, especially since that would require me to be completely objective and probably look at the video on the same screen, probably with the same player in both cases, just to see, just to eliminate the possibility that playing it on the Blu-ray player versus on a VLC on the computer, playing the Blu-ray on the Blu-ray player versus the DVD on VLC didn't make a big difference. The Blu-ray player, since it's a Blu-ray player, is not set to game mode on the TV, so the TV's got all of its fancy stuff turned on, and naturally, of course, this analysis of the Blu-ray version of Yu Yu Hakusho ignores the 120 or 240 hertz smoothing that the TV likes to do on scrolling screens, which is very funny to see in older anime. As for the content itself, it's pretty enjoyable. I now get the impression watching it that a lot of this beginning stuff, there's neatness to it that's sort of like the first season of Rurouni Kenshin, but my brother's wife is saying that the really neat stuff starts happening after this place where I'm at. And I pretty much watched very close to where I was on the DVDs over the weekend, so we'll probably find out pretty soon. I also finished watching Gokudo, which I think I mentioned last week as having started, and it ended up being itself the entire time. Really hard to say for certain that there was relevance to where it ended, so much as it ended one important story arc, I guess. But that series was just strange. It almost felt like, I don't know. Maybe it feels kind of similar to the storytelling of Bobobo, which is kind of, there's a plot-ish sort of setup, but there's a lot of randomness in the direction it goes and what happens, etc. Maybe. It wasn't bad. It was just strange. I don't know what else to say other than I guess it ended at a... I guess I can't really say anything about how it ended other than maybe it'd be interesting to see just a little bit more of what happened at near the very end there. I also watched Sergeant Frog Season 3 Part 2. Actually, I guess I can only describe it as more of the same. That's not to say that Sergeant Frog necessarily has anything about it that I would describe as boring, but rather it continues to just be amusing as I go through. You know, you still hear those little subtle things that they probably added into the dub after the fact to maybe make it appeal to a slightly wider audience than the original Japanese version, but at the same time, it's a lot less intrusive than what was it called? Ghost Stories? Yeah, Ghost Stories. And otherwise, I still think it's an amusing show to watch, and I look forward to seeing if Season 4 comes out. And then finally, I finished watching Samurai Girls, and of course the 6-episode OVA thing that's mostly silliness, I guess. And something that wasn't listed on my anime list, so I didn't mark it off, or mark it as watch, is there was also a series of 6 animated manga silly shorts, I guess, where it basically takes 4-panel mangas just to be kind of funny and silly, which I actually thought kind of matched the tone of the side story OVA thing, if I'm remembering that stuff right. But it's really hard to, because I watched that this morning and the manga stuff kind of is stronger. So I really have more to say about the series than I do about those. I won't say the series is bad. In fact, there's probably a lot about it that's actually good. It just things that, little things that are the things that, what's that word? Nitpicks. Not nitpicks. Oh, just, little things that I have trouble tolerating that other people might not. For example, it kind of begins in a similar way to Love Hina, where a character in a place where he's supposed to be is mistaken for a pervert, and that gives people permission to attack him. A lot of people to attack him. And, I kind of find those beginnings to be pretty weak, to be honest. Which isn't necessarily too bad, because it doesn't make it a bad beginning. It just makes it a series that says, oh, I'm the kind of series that wants everybody to start off on the wrong foot and set a tone, I guess. But I think there's other series where they just don't really start appropriately at all. whereas this is a very clear beginning. And maybe the ending was a pretty good, clear ending, I guess. It's probably not so overall complete that they couldn't make more if they wanted to, but at the same time, it's okay if they don't make more. And oh, speaking of nitpicks, one thing I found really annoying. This show, the way this show works, when a superpowered character is doing certain things, and they do this a lot more in the very first episode than later, and this may be intentional, but basically, they like paint to splatter on the screen. The paint that's the same aura as the character. So since most of the main characters have black auras, and that's kind of an interesting, maybe a yin-yang thing in this case, actually, where unless the black part of yin-yang was supposed to be bad in some way, the main characters weren't bad. They just had black auras. But when stuff happens, it would cause paint to splatter on the screen, and it kind of made it. It was very distracting, I thought. It didn't pop up too often when the show itself was telling story more, like halfway-ish in, and characters were doing stuff. So it's really mostly a problem near the beginning where they're just trying to go overboard with it, I guess. Screen transitions also use that paint splatter effect, but it's not too bad. So it at least keeps up with the theme. But yeah, I wanted to at least mention that it was kind of annoying at the beginning. It's sort of like a movie that has an obviously awesome action scene, except everything's too dark or close up or shaky cam and all over the place. You can't follow what's happening, and so you can't really care. I think the new Alien vs. Predator movies are actually, I guess there's only the 2 Alien vs. Predator movies. I think those are complaints. People usually level at those. And that is kind of similar to the idea of the beginning here. Just too many distracting things so that we can't understand what we're seeing. But again, that may be because there's some foreshadowing going on that they don't want us to very clearly pick up. We could if we wanted to go back, but maybe we could just go forward watching the series. Now, other than that, it feels like you could probably pick a bunch of different ideas from different series that are mixed in there. The fan service, it's... So if anybody ever complained about the fan service of High School of the Dead, just make them watch Samurai Girls, and, well, they'll probably be turned off from anime forever, but, you don't get... The only way I think you could get worse than Samurai Girls is by going straight into Queen's Blade. It's pretty blatant out there, but not as much as Queen's Blade, so it wasn't too over the top. It was just a bit distracting, I thought. Maybe topical, but otherwise there are aspects of it that kind of seemed a lot like a bunch of other shows as well. I mean, I've just compared it to like Lavina and Queen's Blade, and there's some parts of it that I would actually compare to Steel Angel Kurumi, but exactly what I would compare, I don't want to say. There's also an interesting... It seems like another version of Sekirei, almost, if I remember right. There was people kissing and powers because of that, and this has kind of a similar concept to it. Although one difference is Sekirei was constructing an obvious harem of superpowered women, whereas this one, I don't know, it's very strange what they did. I really wasn't expecting it to, I wasn't expecting exactly what happened with all of those power-ups, so it's kind of hard to explain. It's the kind of thing where you really ought to watch it in order, if you want to understand that. It's something that maybe spoils what's going to happen bits and pieces throughout the series. And I think there was something else I considered comparing it to, but I can't remember what now. So I guess if you took those 4 anime, crammed them together, you'd probably have Samurai Girls, and maybe. Maybe there's more missing to it, but overall, it was okay. Probably not a... Hard to say how it compared to everything else I watched this week, I guess. I didn't watch anything that jumped out at me as an obvious that this thing could be a potential favorite. I think. Hard to tell, because there's also confusing things. But oh well. I'm starting the babble, and that's everything I watched, so I guess it's time to end the anime analysis there.